Hi, once again I'm Sydney and I am a servant of the Almighty God. These are some of my additional guiding principles that go along with the commandments because I believe that's the guiding principles that we should all be following. I am the author of Humanity's Inflection Point, and if you can, please pick up a copy. And I want to give a heads up about my upcoming book, which will have everyone recognizing, and it may be a challenge for scientists to recognize that we have a creator. It will make sure that everyone recognizes that. Everyone will recognize again that we do indeed have a creator. Now, whether they say it's aliens or, as we believe, in a God who cares about us, who designed much of this so that we can benefit from it, that will be the open question. But in my upcoming book, which I will give some more details in an upcoming video about, it will basically have everyone recognizing that. But today, continuing the Recognizing God's Omnipotence podcast, I want to focus on, as believers, we all recognize that there is both good and evil in this world. It's one thing that I say all the time to people. I says, I am superstitious because I believe in God. But when you believe in God, you also have to recognize that there is good and there is evil. And I think this is one of the real failings of modern religions. They may not like to hear, but I think that most religions today, and I tell people, says they are more into prophet worship than recognizing the true, living, omnipresent, omnipotent God. That we all exist in His presence. And as such, as we've been taught, not only is there good, but there is evil. And so they should be emphasizing everyone to recognize we all exist in the presence of the living God, and seek to have people grow spiritually so that they build immunity from the demons around us. It seems, unfortunately, that most religions, the major religions, are into this either prophet worship, and the focus is on telling stories about things that happened many years ago, which is why people are losing contact with, we are in the presence. This is an ongoing thing. It's something we live. And those demons, it's kind of like, in my book, and I always talk about, science is much based on empirical data. You can measure, people can verify, except for psychiatry, psychology. And they are the ones who say there's no such thing as spirits. There is nothing spiritual. It's all something firing in the brain, and come up with theories which they cannot prove. They absolutely cannot prove. But they totally discount the spiritual concepts. Anything spiritual is discounted. And that has a major effect on all of us. Because most people who go to church in these modern societies, that is really the guide. There is no God. This is why they are not aware of the impact. Just as we can recognize, and to me, to a large extent, what psychiatry looks at and says, this something will just happen. Like things like, nobody can prove that somebody has two personalities, something in their brain makes them one person one day, and then they say, and we see it all the time, people say we hear things, and they say, well, no, that's just imaginary stuff, and that there is no bearing to anything spiritual there. But we see it, we hear, and we observe people whose wills are compromised. And many of the people we encounter, we see where greed, hate, deception, we see it. And I really think that there is almost like an hypnotic effect. Now, if you think about hypnosis, it really is not something that physically moves you. It's something that goes in mental and possibly spiritual realm. And so what I've seen recently where people, former friends of mine and still some friends of mine, they cannot tell the difference between what's real and not. And it makes me wonder. And normally these are people who are not recognizing and having that personal relationship and trying to obey the commandments. And now they've gotten into this realm where what is real, what is not, it's basically, if this guy says it, it must be real. And so it doesn't matter scientific, nothing else matters. So you see, there is something very deep that is occurring. I think it's tied to the spiritual. It's these demons who are almost controlling, they are usurping the will, they are usurping reality from people. And churches are just busy with, let's talk about, stories that happened 1,000 years ago and this one did this. And it's more like, enterprises that are self-maintaining by, bringing in funds, and they're happily doing that. Whereas all around us, we see these impact of lies, of hate, all of these things, the greed that's unleashed, where it's like the people at the top just want to get more and more, and they'll tell you that. And they will try to cut, the pay, the services, all of these things. And they're cheered on because everybody else wants to be like that. And you're like, what kind of world are we going to have? Again, when we recognize that we are special, created to nurture, to be the ones to take care of. And that is declining because less and less people are dedicating themselves to be the good stewards of his creation. And I see the impact that these demonic forces are having. And the churches are busily, they seem to be getting the same thing. They want more contributions so that they get bigger, more mega churches, more mega this. They want more planes, more. And meanwhile, these demons are just proliferating. The effect of them are just proliferating everywhere. So the churches are lost. And everyone says, well, mine. But it's all about a show. It's all about a show. And if I can act and show that I am rich, then, oh yeah, everybody comes to me, because that greed. And we will lie. And all of these things, it's such a degeneration of who we should be. Because these demons are having more effect. And they realize most of the people who perpetuate this, who seem to be moving forward with all of this greed and that sense of, I need to be the focus, that emotional need. I need people looking at me. I need them, constantly paying adulation to me. These are the things we see. These are the weaknesses. These are the things that we were taught not to involve ourselves and strengthen ourselves. And we can. We can when we recognize, if the churches taught us and reminded, I say every time we enter one of these religious organizations, when you go to church, when you go to a mosque or a temple, we should be reminded when we get there, you are in the presence. We are all in the presence of the Almighty, omnipresent God. When we leave, it should be the message that we take with us, and that would reinforce that we need to obey those commandments. That for me, I also have to remember that our science reveals God's method, and this is why in my upcoming book I will show that there is a creator. Whether it's up to the reader then to decide who and what or where that creator is. And things like the key to meeting God's expectation of us is self-control. Not controlling others, not trying to usurp. That's what demons do. They don't think. And you see it in some of these leaders. They really don't believe that we should have free will. It's their will imposed upon us. And this is why in my book I talk about, autocracies are demonic because they simply do not believe that anyone should have free will except the ruling elite. Think about that. It's one of the reasons why, autocrats can never be, you can never accuse them. That's the end of your physical being if you accuse them. And I also embrace diversity is his. As servants, we must honor his diversity. It's what you hear in conservation. These are the things that religions today should be focused on, that the living God, serving the living God as we live today, not trying to look at, oh, let me tell you what story about somebody, and maybe it relates to you, maybe it doesn't, but deep down we look at it and we say, that's 2,000 years ago, that's a different thing. Look at, we have cars, cell phones, all this stuff. But when we think of the living God, and when we recognize all of science are gifts from him, I will go into detail about this in my upcoming book. But a short synopsis of this, right? Dmitri Mendeleev getting the periodic table of elements, which is basically the foundation of everything else. Because chemistry, medicine, all the materials we use are based on that information that was given to him in a dream. I always have to remind, and religions they're busy again with talking about 2,000 years ago or thousands of years ago. But we have to recognize that all our sciences are journeys of discovery. No scientist invented any of the things that they discovered. The whole process of evolution was discovered. DNA discovered, stem cells, all the minerals, all the elements of the periodic table, they're already there. The rare earths, they were already there. Oil, everything was already there. And this is what religions, again, busy with talking about some story about this, and it can't be proven, but we can just go on this, and and it's like, no, recognize his majesty around us every day. Meanwhile, demons they proliferate, and their effects are being magnified even in the people in churches. I mean, look at how much hate. Look at how much hate comes out of churches. This religion is against this one. We should kill this. They focus so much. Let's cherry pick, the religious scriptures to find things about killing others and elevate ourselves. We are special. So basically, we are above the commandments. You see it all over the world. This is happening because religions are. They may not be corrupt. Some definitely are, and it's not the religions that really. It's the religious leaders. Especially when it's passed on like a business from father to son. That's a business, because you have to be called, inspired. Feel that love, feel that light, recognize that we are in his presence, to carry the message with humility, with love, with understanding and feeling, having empathy with others. Because you recognize that if you lead, you must have that. So many of them, they just pass on from father to son. It's just a business. And so the son wants to take it to the next level, get more planes, get a bigger place. It's his emotional needs for adulation just drives them. Meanwhile, those who honestly seek spiritual enlightenment are lost. And that's why often they turn away. The demons, they recognize it. We all have horror stories of people who are telling of what they've seen, and I wouldn't go into that. Some of it is just so ugly, of what they've seen. The leaders do before and after. It's horrible. And these are the leaders, and people love them. And oh yeah, we think we should have another plane, and they should do all this stuff. Meanwhile, the simple recognition and teaching that we all exist in the presence of the living God. Every day we should be reminded, and that we can immunize ourselves against greed, hate, deceit, all of these things that lead to us feeling upset, angry against others, when we should be filled with love and caring so that we can be good stewards, is not being taught, because we are given these stories that don't seem to really apply to us, and the religious leaders continue doing this. Well, you know differently. I will continue this, and I have been taking some time to do this new book, which I said will make everyone recognize. Scientists and religion, well, religious accept it, but to get the scientists, the leaders, the scientific leaders of the world to recognize that we all have a creator. And that goes into that coalition, which, that coalescence that eventually leads to humanity's inflection point. I want to thank you again for taking the time, as I remind you, remember, just as we are in the presence of the living God, we have these demons of hate, greed, deceit, and lust that are around us. We should immunize ourselves by building a relationship with the Almighty God, the living God. I want to thank you again, and this is not an accident that you ran into this. There's a purpose, there's something that led you here, and hopefully you will take something from it, something positive, to go on with the rest of your life. Thanks again for taking the time, and until next time, may God bless us all.